The Thargoids. They've been around forever. At least at this point, it feels that way. A constant background menace then. Just how much of a threat you view them as will largely depend on how invested in the game you actually are. But regardless of your personal feelings towards these aliens, it seems as though things are finally about to come to a head, or, as Elite's community manager has implied, we're about to enter the endgame. So, what has changed, what's going on, and what can people expect to happen? Naturally, some of these questions are far easier to answer than others, but it all surrounds Azimuth, perhaps better known as Azimuth Biotech, and their supposed enigmatic leader, Salvation. Now, of course, all of this is background lore in Elite Dangerous, much of it written on the Galnet website, some of it actually taking place in-game in the form of community goals. So, the question on my mind, and perhaps a number of other people's as well, is whether or not this climax will ultimately lead to new content for Elite Dangerous. Of course, I'd like to think that this will definitely happen, but as usual with the way Frontier handle these types of stories, it's very, very difficult to tell. I suspect though, speculation here, that it could very possibly lead at last to the introduction of Thargoid motherships, otherwise as people have sometimes called them, Thargoid Titans. But how could this actually come about? Well, to answer that, we need to head back to the game's lore. Right now, in-game, there's a couple of community goals, two different community goals in fact, ending at different times. One started on Thursday of last week, the other begun just a few days ago. This in itself is pretty interesting, as it's very unusual to have two completely different community goals running side by side. Community goals are starting at separate and ending at separate dates, that is. It all surrounds the very mysterious star system of HIP 22460. For a very long time, this star system was permit locked, which in turn led to a lot of speculation as to just what was going on within this star system, speculation you could read on the official forums as well as on the Elite Dangerous subreddit, not to mention numerous Elite Dangerous videos. In the relative recent past then, this permit lock was dropped, however one planet does remain with a permit lock, and this is where the mystery is now surrounding. So the community goals, what are these all about? Well, it turns out that Salvation is preparing a super weapon that he's going to deploy against the Thargoids. And in order to do this, he needs a big supply of basic medicines, reactive armor, and advanced medicines. This was put in place as community goal last week. Recently, there's another community goal, this time for Guardian artifacts, specifically Guardian relics, Guardian orbs, caskets, tablets, urns, totems, and the ancient keys. This particular community goal is set to expire in 5 days, so we can safely assume that nothing is really likely to happen in this star system before that date. Whilst the community goal can of course complete before that date, the story itself is very likely set to a timetable that Frontier themselves have determined. At any rate, that's the community goals, but what exactly is Salvation's plan? Well, let's read what we've got posted on Galnet. This says, Pilots Federation alert. The HIP 22460 star system will be at the stage for a decisive strike against the Thargoids by Azimuth Biotech and the superpowers. The following message was broadcast across all public channels. This is Salvation. Construction of the Proteus wave has officially commenced. This version of my anti-Xeno superweapon has been designed to bring absolute victory against our adversaries. The HIP 22460 system will serve as the final battleground in the Thargoid War. As with previous superweapons, we anticipate that the Guardian-based technology incorporated within the Proteus wave will once again attract the Thargoids. However, this time it will eradicate the alien threat not just from the system, but from the entire galaxy. Everyone who wishes to see this hostile species defeated once and for all should view this project as a call to arms. This is not a time for politics or debate. It is an opportunity to secure humanity's continued survival. Azimuth Biotech megaships have entered the HIP 22460 system. Commodore Morag Haleron is coordinating the operation aboard the Bright Sentinel. The Heart of Taurus will serve as a delivery point for incoming resources. Two other megaships, Moshashi and Glorious Prospect, are in the nearby Pleiades sector to provide further logistical support. Alliance Defense Force, Federal Navy, and Imperial forces have also taken up positions in the HIP 22460 system. These ships have been modified for anti-Xeno combat as they expect to face Thargoid vessels in greater numbers than ever previously encountered. Military sources also confirmed that the ship's experimental weaponry is being deployed somewhat prematurely, but it should still be effective. So that all sounds very exciting, doesn't it? As though we're going to get a massive battle within Elite Dangerous, truly on a scale that we've never before seen. Of course, like many other people, I've got absolutely no idea how that's going to play out. Will it just be a continuation of the tech story, something that won't actually take place in game? Will we see another Galnet article in a few weeks from now describing how all of this actually played out? Or will we perhaps see an outcome actually affect the game itself? Will there be a big battle in there? Will planets start burning as Thargoids go from location to location to destroy all of their targets? Or could perhaps the Thargoids once and for all be fully eradicated and therefore removed entirely from Elite Dangerous? The last, I completely, I don't expect that to happen whatsoever. Far more likely that the Thargoids are going to be antagonized, and therefore it will result in the arrival of new forms of Thargoids, maybe even the much-awaited Thargoid motherships. Of course, if nothing happens, if it's purely just text-based story, then, well, I think there's going to be a lot of, slightly disappointed people, just to put it mildly. But personally, I don't see it going that way. I do think, I would like to suspect, that we're going to see some form of new content, however basic or advanced that content will actually play out. Now, keep in mind that the timing of this coincides very nicely with the next big update for the game. Update 13 is a narrative update. We can see that confirmed right here on the roadmap, so that is the update for August. The takeaway point here then, at least as far as I see it, is something is very certainly going to happen, and if it doesn't, well, I'm going to feel pretty foolish about that. Now, there's also some very interesting other lore that's going on behind the scenes regarding the whole Thargoid conflict. It's got quite a few players involved as well. This surrounds the whole concept that the Thargoids are not really at fault, they're not really the enemy. They're just, they're just behaving the way they are because we are the aggressor, humanity is the aggressor. Humanity has stolen their territory, humanity has just caused various problems for the Thargoids one after another, and now the Thargoids are retaliating. And if you look at the history of Elite Dangerous lore and Elite lore in general, that does seem to be the case. Humanity has provoked the Thargoids rather than the Thargoids themselves just outright annihilating humans. In fact, this goes quite a bit further to an entire cult surrounding the Thargoids. These are the Thargod cult. They worship the Thargoids themselves as gods and believe really that we shouldn't be destroying them, but rather worshipping them. Now, wherever you stand on that particular equation, whether you believe the Thargoids are gods, or whether you believe that the Thargoids are not really there to cause problems, that they're just protecting themselves, or if you, perhaps just feel they're outright threats. Either way, it does raise a very good point. Why, in the game at least, is there only the option to participate in conflict against the Thargoids? There's no way to actually go out there and support them. Considering that this is a part of the background lore for Elite Dangerous, it would make for another very nice addition to the game itself. That said, it's totally understandable that when writing content for a game, whether that's dialogue, whether that's lore, or just physical in-game content, it's very difficult to plan out for two distinct outcomes. The risk there is ending up with content that's been developed, worked on, but ultimately not used. Although I guess a way around this is to use the content, put it on the shelf, and release it further down the line. Either way, regardless of what happens and how things play out, for now, the future is very much a mystery regarding the Azimuth saga and the future of, the content in the game. What's equally clear though is that it seems very likely we're going to get an answer to this very soon, at least within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And there is something else I wanted to briefly discuss right as a final note towards this video. This is on the subject of the Thargoids themselves. Could they eventually be defeated? Well, there is one potential option here, and it ties back to some speculation from quite a few years ago within the Elite Dangerous lore. And this idea suggests there's not just one faction of Thargoids, but two. The group near humanity, the one within our very own space, another much further out. The ones nearby tend to be passive and not overly aggressive unless provoked. The further out Thargoids though, the ones much deeper into space, tend to be far more aggressive and much more dangerous. Now, if this turns out to be true, and Salvation's super weapon is capable of attracting Thargoids, or maybe it won't just attract the local Thargoids, but also the far more aggressive and dangerous counterparts that exist deeper out into space, and just perhaps it won't destroy them, but cause them to come seeking what is going on. Bit of speculation there on my part, but something I'd quite like to see. So, what are your thoughts on the future of the Thargoid story? Do you think the Thargoids will be eradicated? Do you think we'll see some new Thargoid content such as the Thargoid motherships? Or do you perhaps feel this is just out-of-game text and will ultimately have no impact on the game whatsoever? Whatever your thoughts, do let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.